left, right.
In this episode, we will be discussing the differences between Europe and the United States. Have you traveled to Europe? Have you noticed that there are a significant number of differences? Well, this is an episode where we list them. If you can think of something, throw it in the comments. I'm curious what you got. See you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Where's this going?
Cheers.
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 All right, bottle pop, champagne,
Crack a beer.
pour it up. All right, we are live. Welcome to Sip Talk, episode 230. My name is Justin DiGiulio out of my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Bartender Boswell, philosopher, philanderer, philanthropist, philatelist, man of a high pH. James, how's the acidity going?
Not good if it's a high pH. That's very basic.
Well, yeah, it depends. Are you a milk drinker?
No.
I know you're not a milk drinker, actually. So today we have a pretty cool topic.
Do you know milk's actually acidic?
I thought milk was basic. Milk is acidic.
Nope.
Oh, thank you for throwing me off my.
Yeah, milk's pH is like a 5.5 or a 6, I think. Like it's not as acidic as like soda, which some sodas can be like more acidic than vinegar, which is crazy.
Interesting. Do you have a lot of vinegar in your house?
A fair bit. I've been known to drink vinegar straight for pleasure.
I have a vinegar honey type mix with some other flavors in there. I've been trying to do like a shot of it every day. It's phenomenal stuff. But it's supposed to be
Like drinking vinegar is good if it's properly mixed up and everything. But like I'll just drink balsamic vinegar straight every once in a while.
How about apple cider vinegar? Have you gotten onto the kick of the drinking of the apple cider vinegar every day?
No, because I don't really care for like whatever health fad is going on one day to the next.
How about pH water? What are your thoughts on pH water?
Oh, it's complete bullshit.
A little over a decade ago, I was at somebody's house and they had this big machine there. We just got this machine. It gives us the whatever pH water. And I thought to myself, all right, so and maybe I'm off on this, I don't know, but I just remember thinking at the time, all right, so you get this big machine that gives you whatever pH water, but when it goes into your stomach, does your stomach acid not affect the pH?
Any of the science behind pH water is complete horseshit. It's one step above homeopathic medicine, but it's a really small step.
So I got to ask you. I just poured a glass of beer from the tap in the bar. You know what it is. What are you drinking over there?
I have some remaining PBRs.
You're really milking that gift. Are they cold?
Yeah. Like we've got a fridge in the garage that keeps things cold. No longer have to just have like a cardboard box sitting next to the refrigerator drinking beer warm. Like after moving out of the apartment, we have moved up in the world.
I'm glad to hear that. On top of my beer here, I have it's called Kentucky 10. And this is a gift from the owner of Borough Liquor, which is a Somerset liquor store. I spent a boatload of money on the kegs and a bunch of bottles. And he came running out to the parking lot, the owner, and he threw me this bottle. He said, "Hey, we just got this from what do you call it? The distiller or the salesperson probably came by the liquor store. He said, hey, we just got this. I want you to try it. Let me know if you like it. And next time I see you,
I want to open up a competitive distillery and market it as LA6.
Yeah. And why is that?
You haven't heard that phrase before?
LA6? No.
Yeah. Oh, so it's in reference to like attractiveness, like where like an
LA6 is going to be LA6,
huh?
Kentucky 10 is going to be an LA6. Yes.
Yeah.
No fake body parts. So we got an exciting episode. We obviously, for those of you guys who listen to us weekly, for the person who listens to us weekly, and my mom, we missed last week. So we got a lot to recap on. We got to fill you guys in on the bar trivia question from 2 weeks ago. James was just in Europe. You were in Bilbao, Spain.
Yeah.
And you had a multi-part trip. I heard you had a stop in, what was it, Philadelphia or something? And
I mean, the travel was all over the place.
Around. I said, hey, you know what? Hold it. Let's have this conversation on air because it seems particularly relevant to our conversation about our topic tonight. So fill me in. You flew out 10 days ago.
More than that.
You flew out Friday.
I flew out Friday the 19th.
Just after our most episode 229. You flew out the Friday following.
Yep.
And you flew where?
To Charleston to Philly, Philly to Madrid, Madrid to Bilbao, and then from Bilbao spent 2 nights there. Then went to Mundaka, which is this tiny little like seaside village that's on a river mouth, and it's got a world famous surfing break there, where the waves just kind of like wrap around the cliff and then break over the river delta.
Cool.
And it's really cool. So spent 2 nights there, and then we did 1 night in like the countryside south, in a tiny little town called Arvizu, which is like located in like a mountainous area in the south of the Basque Country, and like kind of stopped along some towns along the way.
In the Basque Country.
Yeah, and then we did 2 nights in San Sebastian, which is right on the border with France, basically.
So good wine, yeah.
And then so did 2 there, and then 1 night back in Bilbao, and then flew back home.
So you stopped in Bilbao right off the bat, and we were talking about this bar.
The Sir Winston Churchill Pub.
Your favorite bar on earth, Sir Winston Churchill Pub. I looked it up online. I looked it up on Google Maps. I got the interior photos, the exterior photos. Looks like a cool place. So what did you drink there?
The first night, geez, what did I have the first night? I had their version of a gin fizz.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second night, I had their version of a Clover Club cocktail.
So these were on menu items?
No.
Oh, off menu items. You ordered in Spanish?
Yeah.
And so what's the Clover Club cocktail?
Oh, this is a good one. So the original recipe for the Clover Club cocktail, you need to have a raspberry redux sauce. And the way you make that is I usually will buy 2 boxes of raspberries and put them in a little saucepan, and then add some lemon juice and some sugar, and then break them down over low heat for maybe 45 minutes or so. And you kind of taste it to as you're going to make sure that you're getting. It's supposed to be sweet but very sour, and you just
adding the lemon. Yeah.
Huh?
You're adding the lemon.
Well, yeah, but the raspberries are sour on their own. Yeah. So you cook that down and then you strain it out, so you get this syrup that's just this pure raspberry taste. And every once in a while I make it, but it's just a huge pain in the ass. The cooking it down is not too bad, but straining it out takes 30 minutes. So you've got that sauce, and then it's going to be, it's gin, raspberry redux sauce, and an egg white, and you shake that up.
Which typically you don't shake gin drinks.
Yeah, you do.
No, because the ice waters down the gin. Gin drinks are typically not shaken.
The gin fizzes, and
also with egg white.
Yeah, also with egg white.
So remind me, I'm sorry, I've been listening so intently, but I completely forgot the name of the drink.
The Clover Club?
Clover Club. All right. Is there any club soda, or it's just the gin, the raspberry redux, and the egg white shaken?
Yep.
That sounds like a phenomenal drink, by the way.
It really is. And it's double strained.
Although it comes out pink.
Yep.
It comes out pink, which is my worst nightmare. Is getting a pink drink or a girly glass. There's nothing, in my opinion, most of the cocktails that I want to have in a nice rocks glass. I don't want to have it in a girly drink or the different variations of the martini glass. I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, I'm pretty you've got some options with the Clover Club, but usually it'll either be served in a martini or a coupe glass.
So speaking of your trip, there must have been some inconsistencies with your expectations when it comes to drinks, when it comes to what you were doing over there. So tell me, was anything different about being in the UK? Let me first off, what currency were you spending over there in Spain?
Euro.
You're spending euros in Spain. Okay, so to segue here, I don't have a better segue, unfortunately. I've been trying to build up a good segue for the last 3-4 minutes. I have nothing, except they do shake gin drinks over there. Apparently,
But you shake gin drinks over here too.
I don't shake the gin drinks.
Well, you should.
That's why the Vesper Martini, the Vesper James Bond Martini, is a shaken martini, but it's with vodka.
Well, then yeah, but that like martinis are the base recipe for martini is gin.
Exactly. So this one is shaken, but with vodka. Either way, I've lost entirely my segue. So how to segue into how is the UK?
Not the UK. How is Europe? Like, what are some of the differences between
I,
US?
I've
and
titled
Europe?
the episode "US versus UK" only for simple spelling, but
Because you couldn't spell Europe.
I couldn't. Actually, it didn't look US versus Europe. It just wasn't symmetrical.
US versus EU.
But
Although, like,
but I'll
UK
expand. Yeah, I should have done EU. Moving forward, maybe in post production I'll title it US versus EU. What's different? So you flew over there. You stopped in Philadelphia. You flew then to, you said,
Madrid.
Madrid. How much time you spent in Madrid?
About 3 hours.
Okay, what was different in your layover in Philadelphia versus Madrid?
I was drinking heavily in Philadelphia, and I wasn't drinking heavily in Madrid.
Why not?
Because
Time of day, exhaustion.
my mom was very nice. I was traveling with my mom, and I had a 6-hour layover in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, "Look, I'll pay for you to get one of those lounge passes to the American Airlines lounge."
Did your mom meet you in Philly?
She did, but
Okay.
significantly later.
Right.
Like, so I got there and I had probably 5.5 hours in this lounge, and I had free drinks for the entire time. So by the time my mom showed up to Philly, I was in a great mood.
She may, the thing is, when you were younger, the idea of traveling with family is not that alluring. If anything, when you're younger, you want to get away from family.
Well, I think it's a curve, because when you're really young, traveling with family is your only option.
Well,
So
it's the only way
it
you can
starts
travel,
high, and
yeah.
then when you're a teenager, it's super freaking lame.
When you're traveling with family as a teenager, all you want to do is get away from them, right? And you want your independence. And then
as you get older, it starts to climb back up again.
Yeah, in my experience, it has to do also with who's paying the bill. I think there's probably a direct correlation. When you're younger, the parents are paying the bill, and you want nothing to do with them. And then when you're older, it's you paying the bill, but you want to spend all this time together and explore and have mutual experiences. So I think, in your 30s and 40s, not that I can speak for ages that I'm not, the traveling with family is actually much more personally rewarding. Because you get to have these mutual and shared experiences with your family. Whereas when you're younger, you want your own individual, unique experience away from the family. Right or wrong. So you went to the lounge, which is one of my favorite parts about airports is finding a good airport lounge and just chilling there. For me, traveling is very relaxing. I know a lot of people I've traveled with don't find traveling relaxing, but just like we talked about last episode, you don't even pack until the day of or the day before.
I think so I flew out Friday morning at, let's say, 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
and I think I did my packing at about 10 or 11 at night the night before.
I think we were talking about it just after the podcast. So for me, the traveling if I'm going on vacation, the whole fucking thing has to be relaxed. And if it's not relaxing, I would cancel the goddamn trip.
Well, I'll tell you, like, I enjoyed my time in the lounge, but then I had like a 7-hour flight to Madrid, and that was not relaxing.
Well,
I like
you're
being
drinking on the flight.
a little bit, but like it was. I even took like a promethazine to try and help me sleep, and I just fucking couldn't. Um,
Well, you've never traveled also with a baby, by the way. I will tell you, having taken a couple international flights with a baby, uh, then there is no sleep. But I still like drinking. I'm not a big fan of the and we gotta move forward. But I'm not a big fan of food on the flight. But the liquor on the flight is the same. Liquor, Jack Daniels is Jack Daniels, Cabernet is Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc is Sauvignon Blanc. However, the fish plate or the beef plate or the chicken plate is not what beef, chicken, or fish is back on land. I don't know what it is. They say it has to do with the dryness of the air.
it's also actually the noise.
It affects your taste of the food is way different. So my advice is, if you can avoid at all costs eating on any flight and just wait out those 7 hours, those 12
Well,
hours, depending on where you're
yeah,
flying.
I mean, they served us something basically within the first hour of the flight, and it was fine. I didn't have any complaints about the food. It was really like the next 6 hours that sucked because I really wanted to go to sleep and I just couldn't.
Um, we're going to get into the topic of this episode in just a minute, but I want to share with you, as we have just passed Halloween. Speaking of on-flight food, they used to give out peanuts on flight, and then they gave out pretzels. And then you go to JetBlue and they give out like blue chips and popcorn or something. But the peanuts on flight is no longer the industry standard. The way the airlines have changed so much over the last 70 years is absolutely wild. On the Halloween note, though, I went out trick-or-treating. I was told that because we kept going up to these houses. This is just in New Jersey, the suburbs of Manhattan. We kept going to these houses where there was nobody at the door. There was just a bucket of candy. And I kept saying, when I was a kid, if there was a bucket of candy, that would have gone to the first trick-or-treater. Right? I saw a lot of shit on social media like, oh, these people took all the candy, shame on them. I'm thinking like, well, hold up. You left a bucket of candy for children to.
It's the honor system, man.
I mean, that's like a lost wallet. Like if you lose your wallet, you get the cash back. Now, sure, most of the time you actually do, but I would never expect it back. And a lot of people were mad because their Ring doorbell, now that fucking everybody has a Ring doorbell, showed people pillaging their fucking candy. So one thing I noticed was not a lot of people were doing the doorbell trick or treat thing. They were just putting the bucket out. I was told that was because they didn't want to interact with people. They were trying to keep distance. It's happened since coronavirus. Nobody wants to have this kind of face-to-face interaction. They also don't want to offend people. And then I was also told this a couple of years ago, actually, even though 2 years ago out here, now that I live in the suburbs of Manhattan, also just a little further out, and I bought like 13 to 15 different bags of candy. And I think I told you this. You know how many trick-or-treaters we had?
Like 3?
No, 0.
Aha.
0. I had like carved pumpkins outside, music, lights going on. Nobody came by. But also, I learned this year that, and all I wanted was Reese's peanut butter cups. None of the houses were giving out peanut butter products. Nobody was giving out Reese's. They were in short supply this year. And then also Snickers, because Snickers has a nut in it. Snickers in short supply as well.
Huh. We gave out 100 grand bars and Butterfingers, and Butterfingers have peanut butter.
Yeah, but if you're 6 or 7 years old with a peanut allergy, do you know Butterfingers have peanut products in them?
That's not your responsibility. That's your parents.
That's what I'm thinking. But like if you're 6 or 7 years old, you should be trick-or-treating with your parents, and your parents need to have that iron fist on top of you to know what you should be eating and shouldn't. And
yeah,
it was just weird for me to kind of see the fact that nobody was answering their door. There was just a bunch of buckets, and then I was like, all right, if you guys, I was with like 8 or 9 kids. I was like, all right, if you guys get Reese's, I got dibs. I'll pay you for the Reese's. There was no Reese's peanut butter cups.
I mean, That's actually what we did this year. Is we just put a bucket on a chair out in our driveway, and like me and my roommate stood out there for like 10 or 15 minutes, and we had a couple people come by and we said hi to them and everything. But then I was like, all right, I'm bored and I want to take a nap.
You and naps.
Well,
So I got our segue. I got our segue. So you weren't there this year. You weren't in the EU for Halloween.
no, left just before.
However, do you know what Halloween is like in Europe?
It's not really a thing.
It's not really a thing.
You've got a few people, like it gets kind of a token gesture of like a couple people recognize that it exists, but it's not a big deal there at all.
Do you know it is more of a thing? And I think that's either today or yesterday.
All Saints Day?
The Day of the Dead.
Well, which is on the same day as All Saints Day.
And the Remembrance Day of the is it Spanish culture or is it Mexican culture?
Well, Day of the Dead is Mexican.
Mexican, yeah. But the paying tribute and the remembrance to the dead ones, that's something they do. But there's no trick or treating in Europe.
Oh no.
So as we get closer to our topic here, we are talking about the differences between Europe and the United States. Now, I noticed you don't have a particular list. I don't know if you saw my list on page 2 of our conversation. We'll get to page 2. Where do you want to start? I know where I want to start. I want to start with my number 1 here.
Well, I'm going to start with my number 1, which is, and this is not on any of the lists probably, but at least in Spain, alcohol prices there are downright irresponsible.
Because of the low cost of wine?
Yes.
That's funny, though, because there's other places like Sweden and Finland where the alcohol prices are actually quite high because they tax the alcohol to discourage drinking.
Yeah, so that's why, like, from the U.S., like, the whole idea of, like, excise taxes and trying to discourage alcohol use by taxing it a lot.
Yeah. What they've done with tobacco in the U.S.
Well, they do with tobacco in Spain more than they do alcohol. But, like, we were buying bottles of wine from the grocery store that were costing, like, $2.50 that were genuinely good.
The same way you would buy a gallon of milk or a half gallon of milk at the grocery store for $3, you get the same thing. You milk the cow, you milk the grape.
Yeah. I bought, and this is mostly like a throwback to the meme, but I bought a liter of wine for €1.60. Now, this was not good wine. I bought this because, like, it was a go-to when I lived there in 2007.
When you were broke and
when I was on a college student's budget, this is what you bought. You bought Don Simone, which at the time was going for about €1 even for a liter of wine.
And now it's a €6, which, by the way, US dollars is like $2.75.
No. Euros are about $1.08 right now. So $1.60 comes to like $1.80 or so in US dollars.
Not much. Yeah.
A €1.60 comes to about $1.80 or so. I loved how cheap the alcohol was there, and how easy it was to get practically anywhere you went.
To get? Well, you were taking public transit or you were taking cabs?
We rented a car for about half the trip.
And drove around drunk?
No. It might have looked like we were drunk, but that was just incompetence.
And in Spain, you're driving on the right side of the road, yeah?
Yeah.
Versus
that brings me to my second point.
Go ahead.
So, like, I consider myself to be a pretty aggressive and fast driver in the United States, and I did not feel that way in Spain.
Because your aggression was meant by more aggressors, yeah?
Well, like, I wouldn't say that the Spanish drivers were particularly aggressive, but the speeds that they drove on some of these roads, I was like, I'm having trouble keeping up. Now, granted, I'm in a rental car and I don't really want to wreck it, but it's still, and like some of the roads that we were driving on were intense, man. Like these mountain roads where you're going like climbing like 2,000 feet of elevation in 2 miles with switchbacks and hairpins and narrow turns and blind turns. So many of the turns I was taking were blind. And I was like, if I could just see the apex of the turn, I could probably take this a little bit faster, but I don't know what's next.
Yeah.
And
so here's what they had on you is they knew the road, so you didn't know how hard to turn into the turns because you didn't know what was ahead of you. But that's a big factor is the knowledge of the roads. I find, luckily, coming from Manhattan and spent I have a lot of topics to talk about streets in the U.S. But New York City is comprised of people from all over the place. And there are a lot of aggressive drivers here. So when you go to other cities where you have a high population density, where they're driving aggressively, coming from Manhattan, I can pretty much hold my own. And also like the taxi drivers, especially being from India, a lot of them, they treat red lights like yield signs. So especially in the outer boroughs, right? Like in Manhattan, you get a lot of traffic light cameras, but it's pretty crazy driving here.
When I was in Spain, the last time I was in Spain with a rental car was when my brother was studying there in 2011, and he was talking about Spanish drivers treating basically any road sign as a polite suggestion, which I actually love. It was really refreshing driving in Spain for the most part because I could kind of just do what I wanted to do, and I could drive as fast as I wanted because there was always going to be somebody faster than me.
Which you don't have to worry about getting pulled over in that respect. Did you spend any time with any locals?
A little bit. I didn't get to interact with people from Spain as much as I would have liked, but we actually had one really cool interaction where the capital of the Basque Country is Vitoria, which is about an hour and a half south of Bilbao. And we just visited there for like a day. Not like we didn't stay there. It was like as we were on our way from one city to the next, we went to Vitoria for like 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
And we walked around the city for a little bit, and finally we're like, all right, we're hungry. And neither of us really like Spanish food because it tends to be kind of bland.
And fishy.
Yeah, especially in the Basque Country.
All right.
And so we walk by and we see a place called like Cafe Yasser. And I look at it, I was like, this doesn't look all that Spanish to me. So we walk in, and it's this restaurant being run by like an Algerian guy.
Okay.
And it was kind of like a mix of Algerian and French and Spanish food. And we ended up getting French tacos, which were burritos.
Okay.
But everything was prepared super fresh. Like the ingredients that he used had been delivered earlier that day. And so
which is I ordered a hamburger at a restaurant for lunch today, and I thought to myself, how long has this meat been in this restaurant? So when you're at a restaurant where you know the food is incoming and fresh on a daily basis, it's really, I don't know, I think it's a pretty cool thing in my opinion.
Yeah, so
which we don't in the U.S.
Yeah, the ingredients
in restaurants.
Yeah, the ingredients were as fresh as they could possibly be. The dude did a really good job cooking them up, and then one of his friends from Algeria came in, and we ended up hanging out there for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, talking with these two Algerian guys about all sorts of stuff, and they were super friendly. So that was probably the biggest like local interaction that we had with people.
Not bad. Should we hit our list and maybe 3-4 minutes from now I will answer our bar trivia question from last week.
Yeah, you go ahead. I've already hit like 2 or 3 of mine.
So did you meet anybody with pets?
We ran into a number of pets while walking around.
Okay, so in my experience in the U.S., people who have animals treat those animals like they are children. They dress them up, they clean them, they wipe their asses, they feed them food that they themselves would eat. Whereas the rest of the world, for the most part, and the thing is, as the rest of the world is influenced by the United States, they are changing their ways a little bit, but most of the rest of the world treats animals like animals.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a cat in a different country, you treat it the same way you would treat a chicken or a pig or whatever other animal be running around. You don't give it a name, and if you do, it's kind of jokingly, but you don't consider it your own child. Animals are animals in other countries, and animals in the U.S. are, for whatever reason, family members.
Yeah, to me that's always been weird, especially when people talk like I see this with the online dating all the time of like mom to a fur baby. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
It's it is it's just, it is so strange that we develop these attachments. And I grew up with 4 cats and a dog, and the dog died. We got another dog, and we still had 4 cats. I think maybe at one point we had 4 or 5 cats. I don't freaking remember. And they were members of the family. But as I grew up and grew away from having regular pets, the idea of replacing those animals or implementing animals into my regular life just seemed so foreign. I mean, it was part of my life growing up, but the idea of like getting another pet and bringing it in and saying, all right, you're a new family member and we're going to nurture you. And for the 7 years or the 12 or 14 years that you live, it's so foreign to me as an adult. And look, I live in the suburbs. I would totally get a dog for security and to have around the house. It'd be nice for the dog to greet me when I came home. But a fence out here would cost me like 40 or 50 grand. And I have no desire to put in the fence. I'm pretty happy with my property lines as they are.
Yeah, my roommate has a cat, but it like
We see the cat. Yeah, we see the
yeah.
cat.
But like, if I were to make the choice of having a pet, I would say no. Like, it's money and responsibility that I don't need to spend.
It's an additional level of responsibility with, in my opinion, somebody who's not emotionally dependent on an animal. It's responsibility without that much return. And also, I don't need the emotional, compassionate member in my corner, right? Like I don't need that. I don't need that to help me out through my daily life.
Like, every once in a while, it's cool to have the cat around, but for like, it's not something that I need.
I listened to a podcast actually yesterday on my drive home, and it was called White Dog Poop. I figured I'd just throw it in this episode. I don't know
where you're going with this.
I don't know if you remember when we were kids, dog poop was oftentimes white.
Not initially, it would like turn white as it dried out.
It would turn white as it dried out, and it never occurred to me that it just went away. Like I didn't have pets, I didn't have to scoop away poop. But I learned that white dog poop was a result of the level of calcium in dog food and the level of bone meal and just shit that was in dog food.
Yeah, it was super low quality, and that's why.
Really, really shitty dog food. All right, let me.
Yeah, today's dog food tastes way better.
I used to eat dog food as a kid, and now I'm thinking like, oh, it was literally that bad. Okay, interesting. But when you're a kid, you just, I mean, we'll go there. We'll talk about babies.
Well, real quick, since we're on the topic of pets and dogs and stuff. So one thing that we noticed when we were there a week ago was, in general, the dogs that people had when they were out walking them were really well behaved. A lot of people would be out walking with their dog without a leash. And the dog would just kind of stay with them. And like there were times where like the dog might get worked up and like the owner would like snap their finger and like the dog would just immediately stop. So like I thought overall the way that people had their pets trained in Spain was way better than what I've seen in the States.
Dude, probably same shit with kids.
Oh yeah.
Like your kid walks up to another kid and just like beats him up. You're like, oh no, that's his disposition. You don't punish him. That's who he is. Don't challenge who he is as a person. I want to hit my whole list here. I don't know if you see my list. I want to delve into this list. I think before we really hit the hardline list, I will give you the answer to last week's trivia question, which let me read you.
Read the question first.
Because this, I like this one. All right, let's see. This was for the geometry, math majors, philosophy majors, or anybody with a green thumb who likes to plant plants and dig holes. So you get a hole that's 2 feet wide, 2 feet wide by 3 feet. It's a rectangle. It's 36 inches, 3 feet deep. And the question was, and I directed this question towards those of you who are gardeners and those of you who are math majors, because I know you understand math. And also philosophy majors, because I know you understand the nature of the question. So you dig this hole in the ground, 2 feet wide by 3 feet long or so, 3 feet deep. How much dirt is in that hole? Do you remember the answer to this one, James?
Yeah, I answered slightly differently than the correct answer, but it's very much on theme. My answer was all of it.
All of it. So the issue is when you dig a hole, you are creating negative space. And in this negative space, how much dirt is in the hole that you've created?
Well,
Zero.
none.
Zero.
My answer is all of it because the hole contains the entire Earth, so that's all the dirt.
You have displaced the dirt. So you dig a hole. How much dirt is in that hole? No dirt. Zero. I like that question. In the last 2 weeks, nobody got it right. So this week, our bar trivia, I think is a lot easier. I think it's a lot easier. I think everybody's going to get it. Everybody's going to shoot me a text or a DM. They're going to have the answer to this one. But let's get back to what is different in the EU versus the US. Did you go to restaurants where you pay with a credit card?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go there, did you change a lot of money, U.S. dollars to euros, or no?
No, we withdrew some cash from an ATM, but we didn't take any U.S. dollars and went to a money changer and did it that way. We did not do that.
So in the U.S., when you settle your tab at a table, what I find is they usually put it in that credit card, Amex or Visa leather-bound envelope, and they take it back to the register and then run your card at the register. In the EU, they bring a mobile credit card machine to your table and they run your card at the table. Your own credit card never leaves your site.
Yeah, that was like our experience every time.
Let me ask you another question. Did you? And we did an episode on this, which is why I'm seeing a lot of parallels here. Did you happen to use a public bathroom, especially in a restaurant?
No, I used bathrooms while I was in a restaurant, but like I didn't use a public bathroom, and basically the bathrooms that we use in a restaurant we consider to be like semi-public in that like you can't just walk in and use the bathroom and walk out. Like you need to be like a customer.
Okay, now we're going different places here. You're referring to your article. What I'm talking about are going to a bathroom where there are bathroom stalls.
Oh, in terms of the way that the stalls are designed?
Yes, in the U.S., when you sit in the bathroom stalls, should you be sitting, and you look out, there are gaps between the door and the wall.
And also between the floor and the...
There are also gaps. Yeah, there are also gaps between.
Usually a much bigger gap.
Yeah, like a 12-inch gap between the floor and the door and the floor and the walls. Whereas when you're in Europe, there is no gap. You have total privacy between the door and the wall, and then also between the floor and the wall and the floor and the door. Now, we keep doing things like that in the U.S., and they say we talked about this in the former episode. But they say it's for the safety of the person in the bathroom. One, you can walk by and see if something's occupied. But two, should there be an emergency, you can dive underneath it.
It's such a dumb rationale for it.
Yeah, it's reverse rationale. They're not doing it so that people can dive under. They're saying it is the way it is, and then people can dive under.
Yeah,
it's total bullshit. So you may have missed the best 2 weeks in the Northeast to leaf peep. Now, it's my understanding that Europeans don't go leaf peeping. Have you ever been leaf peeping?
No, I grew up in upstate New York. Like, I just got to live it.
You're always leaf peeping. I had a new hire start yesterday, and she drove from Rochester to Philadelphia to New York, and she was like, "Yeah, it was the longest trip ever." I was like, "Yeah, but it was also the most beautiful time you're ever going to spend in the car." for 7 or 8 hours. And I'm sure it will get old very fast. However, every minute that you're spending in that car is cinematic, right? You're driving through the mountains and the hills of upstate New York, driving through Pennsylvania, and you're getting to experience like these majestic hills, majestic mountains covered with orange and red and yellow leaves. And they were at their peak in the last 2 weeks. So I know Europeans, not big leaf peepers. You want to hit the next one here? I'm curious. Page 2. I'm curious if you engaged in this while you were out there.
Oh, tipping?
Tipping.
We did a little bit of that. So at the Sir Winston Churchill, we tipped. So the past 2 times that I have been in Bilbao with my mom, one when I was studying there in 2007, and then again when my brother was studying there, we went back to Bilbao in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And both times, like, I dragged her to the Churchill, but she wasn't all that impressed with it. And I think the first time was because, like, I dragged them there immediately after their flight landed, and they're just like, we're really fucking tired. Like, and then the other time, I don't know. But this time, I was able to bring my mom there when she was actually properly well rested and in the mood to go to a bar. And she ended up loving the place. And loving the bartender.
So tipping.
So we tipped well there.
What was your tab? I'm just curious.
Oh, it was only like €22 for 2 drinks.
Oh, okay. Well, 2 drinks. That's all right.
And that's a pricey bar.
Yeah, well, it's a
Bilbao, but
a cocktail. You had some.
But yeah, this was exquisitely crafted cocktails. Like, I consider myself to be a decent bartender, but like the bartenders at the Churchill know way more than I do. They're top tier.
Mm-hmm. I went to the Churchill bar in Midtown off of Park Ave the day that you arrived in Spain. I just happened to be walking by, and my friend told me, I'll send you a picture once we're off air. But a cool place, and it was like a first floor bar. The rafters in the bar were just exposed wood, really cool looking. But I went and grabbed lunch there, and I was like, oh, I am one with James. He's in Bilbao, the Sir Winston Churchill. I'm in the Churchill bar in Midtown. But tipping overseas is not. They don't have a big tipping culture here in the U.S. Every restaurant you go to, you're expected to give a tip. And now it's getting weird, whereas you check out at a bodega and they spin the iPad around to you to sign off. And the iPad asks how much you want to tip. And then you feel compelled to tip.
It feels like practically every transaction in the United States now has some kind of a tip expected.
But I've noticed that you go to a fast food place like Taco Bell or McDonald's, there's no tip expected. But you go to a bodega, they spin that iPad around and you are expected to tip. So tipping is definitely it's run amok that everybody is getting tips for everything.
A lot of people feel like it's gotten out of control in the States.
But also the issue with a lot of the tips, especially these days when you're tipping on credit cards, they don't end up in your servers or your bartender's pockets.
I'll tell you, at a restaurant they do.
If it's cash,
no.
But the tips that are going into the paychecks of the people that work there are also watered down post-tax.
Well, yeah. So if you tip in cash, like, because when I worked in a restaurant, like my cash tips, I almost never declared those. But
of course, yeah. But it's coming
to the credit card, I had to declare because, like, when I would be running all my receipts at the end of the night and putting in the tips that I got on the receipts, like those would feed into the software, and that would come out of my paycheck. But those tips were still mine. Like the restaurant wasn't scraping anything off of my tips.
So let's move on real quick. We talked about Halloween being a bigger holiday in the U.S. Also, there's a whole bunch of holidays in the U.S. that we call Hallmark holidays, which are holidays where Hallmark and the companies that stand to profit off of overplaying the celebration thereof profit. So
yeah, there are 3 big offenders.
Halloween, the candy.
No, that's not a Hallmark holiday.
No, it's not a Hallmark holiday, but Valentine's big Hallmark.
Valentine's is the #1 offender.
I would say maybe the next might be Easter.
Nope.
What am I missing?
Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Oh, Mother's Day, Father. Yeah, and
Yeah, it's Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day are the three biggest offenders.
dictated by Hallmark saying these are the times to get gifts.
Yep.
These are the times to buy cards. And it all started with cards, by the way. But how do you up the ante from somebody buying a card that was $1.95, which turned into $2.95, which is now $4.95? Which, by the way, you buy a $4.95 card, that's a cheap card, right?
Yeah, and their manufacturing costs of that card were like 8 cents.
You should be buying the $8.95 or $11.95 card because those.
Who in the world is spending $12 on a card?
It was a nice card.
You're an idiot.
But these companies make you feel guilty for not doing these things, and that's where it gets dicey. You know, a Mother's Day or Father's Day is a day that you spend and show that person that you care. Do you really need to come with a bouquet of flowers or a gift from the Sharper Image or Brookstone and a holiday card? I don't necessarily think so, but we have.
Well, then don't.
In the U.S., we have an expectation built up by the greeting card companies that is exactly what's expected. And even so with Halloween, right? Halloween, very commercialized holiday. And same thing with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was just a day to spend the day with family.
I actually like Thanksgiving. I feel like it's one of the it's still something of a pure holiday.
Because gift giving is not expected. However, what you are cooking is literally dictated by the media.
Sure, but it's still like the holiday itself is hang out with people that you want to see cooking good food and relaxing and enjoying the experience for itself.
But that is a holiday they don't have in any other country. Speaking of our country, flags and patriotism. Let me ask you a question. You drive through any neighborhood in the U.S., you're going to see people with the U.S. flag, right? You spent time in a handful of different cities and neighborhoods in Spain. Did you see any Spain flags?
No, but I saw a crap load of flags that you can see in my background.
Soccer flags, yeah?
That's not a soccer flag.
What is this flag?
That is the flag of the Basque Country.
They had Basque flags.
Yeah, and when you're in the Basque Country, Basque flags are everywhere.
Interesting. So there's a little patriotism there.
But that might be somewhat special to the Basque Country.
I mean, I know it is, but why do you think that is?
Because they want to be independent and they're tremendously proud of being Basque.
Oh, but maybe, do you think maybe that's where American patriotism is born from, the desire to be independent and show it off?
I think it's different.
I mean, we were there at one point, but yeah, the Basque Country is.
I think the genesis might be similar, but what it's turned into in the States is very different than what it is in the Basque Country today.
What it has morphed into in the last 100 years in the U.S.
Yeah,
is definitely, I'd say, roughly 100 years. Next up, did you have to shave in any of the bathrooms over there with an electric razor?
I actually brought a little razor with me.
Electric?
No.
So in Europe, the bathrooms don't have outlets in them. Outlets are not located in bathrooms. It's seen as dangerous. Now in the U.S., there's new code where you have to have the GFI, the ones that have the button that you push and they can short out and cut out. But if you have an outlet in the U.S. in a kitchen under the sink level or in a bathroom, it has to be a GFCI outlet. But in Europe, they don't have outlets in bathrooms. So I don't know if you noticed it or not, but it's.
I didn't, because we were staying in hotels most of the time. We did an Airbnb in Mundaka, but it was something that I didn't really pay attention to because, like, as a dude, I don't really care if there's an outlet in the bathroom.
You didn't have an electric razor.
I have an electric razor, but it's battery powered.
And you also didn't have to plug in a hair dryer, and that's right. That's the biggest feedback about electricity in bathrooms, the hair dryer. Next up is a lot of homes and buildings in Europe don't have whole building water heaters. They don't have a separate line. So in the U.S., for example, my house built in the 50s, we have a boiler. which is next to the well pump. So we have a well pump. Not every house has a well. And then from that room, we have a cold water line and a hot water line. Many homes, especially in countries where the construction is older, they have just one line, and that's cold water. And that feeds it feeds your kitchen sink, your bathroom sink, your shower. And a lot of times they have an electric heater built into the wall that heats the hot water for your shower at the spigot, effectively.
Oh, so basically kind of like the same technology that's in like the tankless water heaters.
But it's at location. It's in the bathroom.
That's not something I paid attention to, or probably would have been able to easily notice anyways.
Next up is I don't know if I mentioned towel heaters. So a lot of bathrooms in Europe have a metal rack on the wall, which is where the hot water is fed through, and you can lay your towels on this rack, and it heats and dries your towels.
Oh, didn't pay attention to that. On the topic of bathrooms, though, something that is super common in Europe, but not at all common in the States. Most bathrooms in Europe have a bidet.
That is true. The bidet freaks me out, man.
I've never used one. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid of them.
I've never intentionally used one. I was in Japan. I tell you the Japan story where I went into the bathroom. You walk into the bathroom, the light turns on, and the seat and the toilet lid lifts up, and it says "Konnichiwa," da 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 da. Gives you some instructions in Japanese. I know what the fuck I was saying. Either way, I sat down. I did my business. Now there was no flush handle. It was just a button digital interface. So I start pushing buttons, and it's talking back to me, and I have no goddamn clue what the hell it's saying. So I hit the buttons, guessing. All of a sudden, I hear, that's strange. And then it just starts shooting water up the ass. And I jumped. Now, if you have a bidet with decent water pressure, probably the best move is not to jump off the toilet. I jumped off the toilet, and it just started shooting up into the wall and the ceiling. And I'm like trying to avoid the stream, but reach over the toilet and push some of the buttons to get this thing to stop. There was water spraying all over the place. It was shouting at me in Japanese. I had no fucking idea what was going on. I was not in a comfortable position given the business that had just occurred. And it was a very quiet, obnoxious, freak out moment for me. Next topic.
Well, yeah. Going back, so this is not on your list, but like just comfort with nudity is much higher in Europe.
Well, all nudity is not sexualized.
Well,
sexualized nudity is sexualized, but the human body is not 100% always sexualized when nude.
Well, I'll give you a quick story. We were driving from San Sebastian back to Bilbao. And we're riding along the coast, and we're stopping at like towns that interest us because we don't really have like time pressure to get back to Bilbao, and so we stopped at this very small beach where like there were big waves breaking far out, and they were washing up onto this beach, and like the beach is kind of like set down, like there's seawalls on either side, and there's some sand, and then the ocean and everything, and we're just watching the waves roll in, and like all of a sudden, like we just see this naked person go sprinting towards the water, and and yeah, they're just swimming naked in the water. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. My mom's like, I want to take a picture. I said, that's in bad taste.
You know what? The person who was running naked probably would be like, oh, these Americans, they probably would have thought it funny. But it is funny. It's funny from our perspective and from their perspective, how we manage and handle that. That's true, especially when it comes to European movies. I want to introduce our bar trivia for this week before we run out of time and get crammed in. This is in my opinion, an easy one. The math pathologists out there probably will pick this one up pretty quick. James, obviously you can't answer until next week. But you were just telling me about a beach. You said it was a lake?
No.
A tributary?
No, it was a beach.
A beach on the ocean.
Yeah, it was on the ocean, and it was just like it was kind of like seawalls and stuff were built up high around it. So like you'd have to walk down some steps to get to the beach.
So this week's bar trivia has to do with a reservoir, and this reservoir has a lock that will drain the reservoir whenever it gets full. Right, but this reservoir is located in the mountains it gets a lot of rain, and they also channel the water into the reservoir in a controlled manner. Now, this reservoir is a lake, and between the months of May to June and July, a lot of water comes into this reservoir, right? And it feeds the surrounding cities. And you get a lot of rain in the summertime, especially in the area where this reservoir is located. So much so that the reservoir doubles in the amount of water that is in that reservoir on a daily basis. So my question to you is, which day of the summertime only, does that reservoir reach the halfway point?
Oh, that's easy.
Thank you for noting that. So you got a reservoir that doubles in capacity every day from the months of May, June, and July to August 1st. It is full on August 1st. So my question to you is, this reservoir, remember, it has many tributaries. It's the rainy season, and it can control the amount of water that comes into it. So my question to you is, when is that reservoir half full? On that note, we got about 2 minutes left before we got to sign off. What else am I missing here? Refrigerated eggs?
No,
Do you refrigerate your eggs?
I do.
Yeah, in the U.S. we refrigerate our eggs. In every other country, they do not. So in the U.S., we actually rinse the eggs after they come out of the chickens. But eggs naturally they're coated out of the chicken with effectively a natural preservative where they don't need to be refrigerated. Only in the U.S. we rinse our eggs before we distribute them to the grocery stores. Let's see. How about coffee? Did you get a coffee out there?
I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, I know. So here we have regular coffee. You go to Starbucks, you ask for regular coffee. They give you a coffee that was drip coffee. In Europe, they don't have that. They have
it's all basically espresso.
They have espresso, and they can make an Americano, which is espresso with added water. But definitely very different.
I will say, like, it's getting
Why don't you give me this?
You can make it 3 minutes.
All right, go ahead. Go, tell me what you're
No, apparently you can't.
No, I can't. I'm here. Go ahead.
Oh, God. All right, so yeah, Justin's got to take a leak, so I'm covering things. I will say that it seemed like when I was in Europe, it was a lot easier to find like fresh like food, and especially like fresh fruits and vegetables much more readily outside of like big supermarkets. Like you could find a big supermarket and get pretty much anything you needed, but there were so many small stores that had like fresh produce, fresh bread, fresh ingredients. So if the grocery store was 5 or 10 blocks away, you wouldn't have to walk that far if you wanted fresh stuff to cook for that day. Another big difference, actually.
I'm sorry, I'm listening. I'm within earshot. Sorry about that.
In the U.S., and now this is kind of tailed back a little bit after COVID, but in the U.S., there's tons of stores that are open 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Europe does virtually no 24-hour things.
And they also take time off during the early afternoon for long lunches.
Oh, dude.
They're going to go to a bodega.
Like, people ask me why I nap so much. It's because of Spain.
I'm all for naps, by the way. But they are really looked down. They're looked down almost as weak. But your presence of mentality and your mental health, if you take a nap during the day, you basically become a refreshed, recharged person after that nap. you'd be that much more physically and mentally present, and just have just overall greater mental health by taking a nap. And they do that in other countries. We don't fucking do it here.
Yeah, I took a nap. I woke up 10 minutes before we started this podcast.
And I hate you for it. I have a lot of resentment, even though I actually slightly envy the fact that you do it. But every time I'm just, this motherfucker's taking a nap. That's why I can't get him on the phone. But that's a big thing that they do in Europe, and it's a really great thing. I think they should never give up. Our Western influence should not eclipse them in that.
Yeah. Before I flew out to Spain, my ex sent me a text wishing me well on the trip, and she said, "Don't sleep too much." And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to like the place where this all began. These are my people."
On that note, I will catch up with you off there. But we got to drop the feed. So I want to thank everybody for joining on Instagram, TikTok. Do not forget, my friends, to subscribe to YouTube and the audio podcast of SipTalk. We will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining. Adios. All right, that concludes this episode. Did we hit them all? Did we miss any? Let me know what we missed. Let me know which ones you liked, and I will see you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.